sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 do.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Spirit Cafe show. I'm Barbara Schreiner Trudell,
And I'm Cheryl Rogers.
and we are so delighted to be here today having courageous conversations for changing times. And as we begin, let us begin with a land acknowledgement. As we gather from many places on Turtle Island, I'm honored to work, live, and play within the city of Toronto on the historical and traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Wendat peoples, and more recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Haudenosaunee nations. And I recognize it's now home to many diverse First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island. And by making this acknowledgement, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation by honoring the land, the history, and the unique Indigenous heritage. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Wow, Cheryl, we have got a topic today. So excited, so excited.
Yeah.
Fiona, so glad you're here. It's interesting when we start thinking about colonialism, we think about the things that were done in the past, and we look at how do we move forward. I think the ideas of inclusion, of reparation, all of that, there's a lot of things to unpack when it comes to those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. The title that we chose for today's show is Writing History, the Costs and Benefits. And as we were talking about that writing, making it right, but also rewriting writing history, right? Because history is written from one perspective.
Yeah, I think if we look at history from the perspective of the Indigenous people of North America or other countries as well, continents as well, or if we look at the history from the white settlers' perspective, or we look at the history of the Black immigrants who were brought here forcibly from Africa, we're going to get very different history stories than maybe what we are accustomed to. So where do we begin in this whole dismantling and recreating and coming to a place of inclusion and equity and possibility, like truly exploring that oneness?
Yeah, so some of the thoughts that I've been having is probably because of the work that I'm in, I feel inundated sometimes by some of these topics, right? And so I started thinking about, I really respect and understand, and especially because I've done a lot of work in trying to understand, the Indigenous experience in Canada over the last 100 years, the race experience in America. And I've really, and my passion is restorative justice. So I start thinking about, in restorative justice, each participant has a voice, which is so important, and they share the harms and the experience that they've had, and then they look at how to make that right, which I think is something we're doing right now. But then it's also about how do we move forward in relationship with each other in the future. And so I start thinking about, I don't know if I've ever heard us talk about that as a community and society. It's the scales, the imbalance, and then trying to correct the balance. When are the scales balanced enough that we walk forward together as one?
Well, wouldn't that be beautiful? I'd love to see that happen. And I think, there are things that have to change, and, what the answers are, who knows? I'm part of an organization here in Toronto where we are working to dismantle colonialism, because we're looking at how that's been created to really perpetuate the idea of separation. And so we're looking at how do we build community.
Mhm.
So we are actively working on discovering ways of including each other, of really honoring and respecting one another. And I think that's part of the journey, at least for me, that as I look at my brothers and sisters on the planet, or my family, excuse me, my family on the planet, I want to make sure that every family member is part of the process and part of the journey, and that we are walking together hand in hand.
Mhm.
That to me is a world that works for the highest and best good of all concerned. And how we get there is going to there's going to be some ripples, and there's going to be some discomfort, because as we balance the scales, some of us are going to have to give up some things
Mhm.
in order to share. There's that idea of sharing. I was taught that as a young person, you got to share,
Mhm.
but I'm
Yeah.
not so sure that we're all that great with it sometimes. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think about that, and one of my questions that I first initially had was, is it about deconstructing something, or is it about creating something new? And yeah, I'd love to hear what you say about that.
Well, I think in order to create something new, we have to kind of move the current model aside. And so I don't know if it's a dismantling or if it's just a kick it to the curb.
Yeah.
Not sure how we do that, but I think we have to create a new model. The one we have right now is very much a caste system.
Mhm.
And so depending on where you are in that system will depend on, how well you do, or some of the limitations you face. It's not that, somebody who immigrates as a refugee can't become something fabulous in our country. They can,
Mhm.
but it's sort of maneuvering the system to get there. Whereas if we were to take that system and break it apart, break
Mhm.
it down and go, no, it doesn't work. Let's create something new. And I think finding a way of, you mentioned balancing the scales. I don't even know how that gets done, but I know at PWA Toronto, where I'm on the board, we are working to create equity, period. That oneness right across, and we're starting at the governance level. And
Mhm.
I think that might be part of the challenge, is how do we get the powers that be, the ones that are at the top of the mountain, top of the pyramid, to go, yes, let's balance the scale, which means bringing them down a notch or two and elevating the majority up,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
a few
Yeah.
steps, or quite a
Yeah.
lot. But it's definitely a journey and a conversation that's in process. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of training going on here in Canada. I don't know about elsewhere, but I
Yeah.
think in Canada and the States, there's a lot of
And
training
yes,
about, inclusiveness, diversity, and equity. And it's
yeah.
this training that's going on, which is something because it's a way of educating.
Mhm.
Um, However, it doesn't implement anything.
Right.
It's coming from the head. So we have to move from the head to the heart and live the truth we know as we unfold it.
Yeah. So we've got to move from that education to the implementation. And
Exactly.
that's what we're doing at PWA.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're actively putting, the boots to the mat, going, what do we do in order to make this change? Because realistically, there's a whole lot of talk going on. You're right. There's a
Mhm.
whole lot of reading and research. Terrific. Okay, we know there's a problem. Now let's begin to, uh, put rubber to the road
Yeah,
and see what we can do to change that, so that we're actually doing something rather than just talking about it.
right.
And I think, we've only just begun. It's a big project that we've started. But even in what we're doing, like getting, board members more involved with the community members, let's get out of the castle here and let's come down into the fields and do some real one-on-one work with each other.
Mhm.
And I think that's when we come to, uh, learn how to treat people respectfully, how to honor and acknowledge. Uh, and man, we got some work to do.
A
I
lot of
think
work.
one of the great inequities is, we've got all of the race relations, but we've also got economic relations.
Absolutely.
And, I look at the homeless population here in Toronto, and really that, to me, that in of itself is a crime.
And it's not
And it
just in
doesn't need
Toronto,
to be.
it's become exponential in so many places. I love what Fiona says, educational reform is fundamental to all psycho-socio-economic evolution. And absolutely that's key, right? And I just want to say, with the greatest respect, there are many organizations that are doing what your organization is doing, Barbara. So I'm not saying that it's not happening. I believe it really is happening.
Mhm.
I just haven't heard anybody talking about, what I'm asking, the question
Yeah,
of when do we become one and how do we do that? And so we're doing it. Are we
yeah.
doing it with that awareness of the ultimate intention and goal?
Well, and I think a lot of organizations are not.
Hmm.
I think there's still a lot of, this going on, but not so much of, actual putting in place a strategy, a plan, that actual steps that. And I think one of the reasons is trying to figure out, again, cost and benefit. I
Hmm.
mean, I can guess what the benefit is. I mean, if we create a place where people are considered people, regardless of skin color and language and their economic status and their educational status and their, the color of their skin or where they're born or raised, whatever, all of these ways we separate. If we can begin to remove those separations, where we look at one another from a heart space of I am you and you are me, I think that begins to change the game. But we have to get people to do that. And there's a cost,
Yeah.
right? Because, when you take a look at the way the hierarchy works, right now, the white male is top of the heap. White male Christian, probably English speaking, would be top of the heap. So
And has
that,
been for how many hundreds
oh,
of years, right?
hundreds of years, hundreds
Yeah.
of years. And so what we want to do is bring that down. Well, that person is kind of enjoying their privilege. And
Mhm.
so to ask them to give up part of it is, that's where some of the struggle can come in, is there's people going, well, I don't want to give up
Mm.
what I have.
Mhm.
I don't want to share. I mean,
Mhm.
as little children, I don't know, I was taught to share and that
Mm.
it was important to share. But when we look at the whole, even food, we take a look at how many people are starving in our world, and then take a look at what the waste of food is,
Yeah.
we soon come to realize that people going hungry, that should never happen, because there is more than enough food to go around to feed every single person on the planet a healthy diet.
Right.
So why are people hungry? It's
Yeah.
called, it's called sharing resources, it's distribution, whatever. Yeah,
Right now it's greed and it's them and us, right?
greed, it comes right down to fear,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
If I give something to you, then I have to lose something.
Yeah.
And you know what? We do have to lose something, and that's okay because
Yeah.
we're going to gain way more.
Yeah,
You know,
and as you were saying that, as you were talking about, putting feet to the ground, it made me think about, that there are many organizations doing that, and they are putting feet to the ground. And there are some that I believe, and it's just my opinion, are doing it to be politically correct, right?
well, you got to start somewhere.
I suppose so. Yeah, I suppose so. The thing about it sometimes as well is the other question I have is that when does blame and shame come into it and come out of it or leave it? The costs, the benefits. I mean, I think the benefits speak for themselves, but
Yep,
what
they
are
do.
those costs?
Well, the cost is that, for me, I might have to do something different or experience life a little bit differently. Not that that's a good thing or a bad thing. It just is what it is. But I think too that the blame and shame thing, I mean, when it comes to shame, that's our individual journey. We need to give that up. What's done is done, cannot be changed. Time to forgive, let it go, and move forward. Forgiving ourselves for mistakes that were made or mistakes that our ancestors made is a natural step forward. We got to let go of what's happened and go, now what? Now I look around Canada and I know it's the same in the US and maybe in other countries, but we have Indigenous communities that do not have water to drink.
Mhm.
And we are a very wealthy country. We're a very prosperous country. That is inexcusable.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that. And I think sometimes we've blamed them. Well, look at, they're drinking too much, or they're doing drugs, or they're not working, or that we set up a system that destroyed their dignity.
Set them up for failure.
We set them up to fail. And now
Yeah.
that they're failing, we blame them for
Mhm.
their failure rather than going, whoa, wait a minute. We set the stage
Mhm.
and here's the result. So now what do? Let's reset the stage.
Right.
And the way we do that is to offer support
Mm.
in every way possible to begin to work that healing process. Not in the sense of, I'm to blame for this, so I have to fix it. No, it's a case of here's something that is not working, but there are things that could help to make it work. And that's, ensuring that the basic life is covered:
Mhm.
water, food, shelter.
Yeah.
When people have their basic needs met, then they can aspire. It's like if you go to Maslow's hierarchy, right? It's like that very base level. If
Mhm.
that isn't met,
Mhm.
nothing else can happen.
Right.
There's no way that success is going to occur. There's no way to really come up. We've got to cover the basics. And that's been left. And I think the government of Canada, the government of the US, I think we need to take a look at that, how
Mhm.
we distribute the resources that we have,
Mhm.
and making sure that we start to um, correct some of the
Yeah.
mistakes we made in the past and rewrite history.
Yeah.
Because the way history is written, the history books I read in school were all from the white perspective.
Well, that's
And
the
that,
key, right? Is rewriting history. And it makes me think of, I've actually got the book right here. I don't know if anybody knows this book. Seven Blind Mice.
oh, I don't know that one.
So as we're talking about this, it makes me think about this. It's a children's book, but it's the different, the mice are trying to describe. So one day, seven blind mice were surprised to find a strange something by their pond. What is it? They cried, and they all ran home. On Monday, Red Mouse went to first to find out. It's a pillar, he said. No one believed him. On Tuesday, Green Mice set out. He was the second to go. "It's a snake," he said. "No," said Yellow Mouse on Wednesday. "It's a spear." He was the third in turn. The fourth was Purple Mouse. He went on Thursday. "It's a great cliff," he said. Orange Mouse went on Friday, the fifth to go. "It's a fan," he cried. "I felt it move." The sixth to go was the Blue Mouse. He went on Saturday and he said, "It's nothing but a rope." But the others didn't agree. They began to argue. A snake, a rope, a fan, a cliff. Until on Sunday, White Mouse, the seventh mouse, went to the pond. When she came upon the something, she ran up one side and she ran down the other. She ran across the top and from end to end. "Ah," said White Mouse, "now I see. The something is as sturdy as a pillar, supple as a snake, wide as a cliff, breezy as a fan, stringy as a rope, but altogether the something is an elephant." And when the other mice ran up one side and down the other, across the something from end to end, they agreed. Now they saw too. The mouse moral: knowing in part may make a fine tale, but wisdom comes from seeing the whole.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Because that's the thing, is looking at it from all the different angles,
Mhm.
so the reading that we do, the courses that we take, the conversations we have with each other, all of these things help us to begin to see the entire picture, which then gives us an opportunity to really discern next steps and
Mhm.
how we do that. One of the things we've done at PWA is our board is very diverse. And so starting there is really helpful because we have Indigenous, we have Latina, we have Black, we have white, we have,
Mhm. Mhm.
LGBTQ plus, we have
Mhm.
hetero, we have, like, you name it, we got it. And so when you put all of those people together and you start strategizing, all of a sudden you're coming from many different places.
Mhm.
And that, I think, is also a great way to begin to build, because we honor every voice.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah,
voice
and
is
that's what it's about. But it makes me go, it makes me think about the education component as well, right?
Mhm.
And perhaps rewriting history in a number of ways, saying this is how, this culture saw it, this is how this culture experienced it or whatever, right? And there's no right or wrong. This is what happened. This is history. Instead of showing one side only,
Yeah,
and one perspective, how do we show everything
all of them.
and to learn to understand the
Yeah.
whole picture, right? So that we can move forward in a way with respect and dignity and
Yeah.
compassion and all those things, but still be able to walk beside each other, not one in front and one behind.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I noticed even like some of the changes we've done in our organization is even with our food bank. It was like getting food in there that they could actually eat and enjoy.
Mhm. Mm,
Because what I eat from my Canadian heritage doesn't interest them.
yeah.
So what is it that's actually needed? And so even contributing to a food bank, which, we think, oh, I gave a bag of potatoes and I gave this and aren't I generous? But if they don't eat white potatoes, which I
Yeah.
know for people from the Caribbean, they don't.
Mhm.
If that's what I've given, well, that's going to sit there.
Yeah. So recognizing that some will and some won't, and respecting that, right?
Yeah,
And considering that, taking it into consideration, which is what I
yeah,
hear you saying. It's more about what are people's preferences who live in that area.
exactly. What is the need?
Yeah, and what is the
Yeah.
need? Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
it's one of the things that I've come to understand, like if I go through my kitchen cupboard, there's very few things that I could put into that food bank, but I can donate cash,
Absolutely.
and then they can buy what they need for the food bank
Hmm.
rather than what I think might
Hmm.
work or what I have left over.
Hmm.
And I think when we start to look at things from different perspectives,
Hmm.
I think that's what really helps us to change the game, is that, we need to listen to others and
Hmm.
see what their preference is or what their thoughts are, and then go from there. Because I think that's part of the walk is,
Hmm.
am I paying attention to what's needed, or am I making an assumption
Hmm.
from my upbringing, from my perspective as to what's needed?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we are talking about North America, right? The US and Canada. I'm from South Africa, and I know that there's a total different experience there, in that South Africa is corrupt. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just not what people envisioned, what Mandela envisioned it to be. And it's really swung from one end of the pendulum to the other. And
Right.
there are many white people suffering, many Black people that are still suffering. It's only the comrades that are rewarding each other and pilfering the pot that have gained anything. And now it's all coming out. I mean, even the president, he was found with I don't know how many $1 million in cash in his home. And now they're talking about the possibility of impeachment. And I don't know the whole story, but I can tell you it's just been since Mandela unfortunately had to pass the banner. It's a totally different experience, and it's very sad. It's very sad. We talk about the lack of resources, the electricity, what do you call it, power plants and everything are collapsing. The roads are collapsing. It's just the infrastructure, right? The infrastructure, because no money's been put into it. So right now they're going through rounds and rounds of load shedding. And, my mom likes to watch this show, and often she can't because she has no electricity.
Wow.
So there's, I just want to put in perspective that we're talking about one area on the planet, and there are so many different experiences in other places.
Absolutely. But injustice is everywhere, and it comes from fear, that we become very greedy because we think power is something we can have over somebody else.
Yeah.
And that seems to be right across the board, that power struggle is, and that comes from fear, because power is something that each one of us has within us, and it's personal. And it's not about manipulating others, although that is what's happening around the world. That's the things that are going on. And I think that, produces some challenges. And it's time for us to take a commercial break. So you're watching Spirit Cafe, Courageous Conversations for Changing Times. I'm Barbara, this is Cheryl, and we will be back in just a minute. So don't go away.
New Thought Media Network is on the rise. We're looking to grow with you. Do you have technical media experience, or perhaps a desire to learn? Are you willing to volunteer your precious time and attention? We share this message to benefit all. If you possess a computer with a camera and a microphone, we will share our knowledge with you. Behind the scenes or being the star, let us bless our one. contact us at info@ntmedia.org.
And we're back. So, Cheryl, what do you think kind of next steps? What are practical steps that you think we could be taking to actually begin to integrate into that place of balance and oneness?
Before I go there, in the break, I've got a mind that just sort of spins, right? Anyway, so what I just wanted to clarify, I talk about South Africa. I don't watch the news too much because I get very upset. I really do. And there's so much suffering going on in there, and there's been floods and other things there too, right?
Mhm.
I just want people to recognize, some people might say I'm talking from my white privilege, but and yes, I have, unfortunately, fortunately, I've had that experience of having white privilege. I was so excited to be part of the Rainbow Nation when Nelson Mandela came out. I really, really wanted to see South Africa become one and blend together as the Rainbow Nation, as we were called, right? And everybody looks to South Africa, the Truth and Reconciliation process. And I mean, what a wonderful, wonderful man Archbishop Desmond, the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu was. He was amazing. And, when my husband wanted to immigrate, I didn't want to. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to believe that this country would go the same way as Zimbabwe, which is what everybody was saying. And I really didn't until he sent me to Canada. And I realized the stress we were living under, behind high walls, barbed wire, electric fencing, armed response, paying for armed response companies. We basically were prisoners in our own home. We have bars on our windows and doors. People really have no idea unless you experience it. You don't, it's like trying to explain being pregnant. It really breaks my heart and it saddens me to see what's going on there and to see how it's affecting my mom and my sister and my cousins and my family, my brothers and sisters, whether they're black, white, blue, green, yellow, right? I love them all. So it's not about that. It's really just about a beautiful country that's infrastructure has collapsed, that has been robbed of its resources. It's those kind of things, and that's where I'm coming from. And again, it's the government and the majority, the population that's the majority, trying to make things right. And I believe they're trying to make things right only with one race.
One perspective.
One perspective, absolutely, right? And excluding all others. My mom said to me, and again, I'm just taking this. I don't have the knowledge yet to speak too deeply, but if the president is impeached or ousted, there's a party called the EFF, and it's just slipped my mind what that is. But if they come in, they will either kick out or murder all whites. That's their agenda. Okay, so just to put things in perspective about,
And that's not the answer.
it's not the answer, but again, to put things in perspective about injustice, race, experience, it's not about color. It really isn't about color.
It's about power. That's
it. It's
who
about
wants to
power.
control.
It's about me, myself, how much can I grab while I'm in this position,
Exactly.
and it's somebody else's problem when I leave, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So, I think, how do we move forward? I think it's important to have the conversations. I really do.
Yeah.
I think it's important to educate ourselves and each other, to be able to have a voice from all sides, just like you said earlier, to be able to hear and to be able to listen from each other what our needs are, not assume that we know what anybody else's needs are. Right? So it's not about how, this is what I'm going to do to fix it or you. It's how do you think we can support you? How do you think we can work together? So it's really about doing things, collaborating. And I know it's going to take a long time, but it's about a shift in consciousness.
Very much so. Very much so. Moving from me to we.
Yeah.
And realizing the power in that and the benefit in that. Because I think when we take a look at a number of things, when we start working together, there is, there's all kinds of dignity and respect and things like that naturally will happen when we're walking hand in hand, when we come to learn about each other. And what happens then is medical costs are reduced. Policing costs are reduced, all sorts of things that end up changing as a result of building a more equitable system. However, again, we go back to, like you say, the greed and the fear that, somebody's going to take something from me. I want to have it all. It really is a shift in consciousness where those of us that have more power than someone else, we have to give some of it up.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to reach deep and go, you know what, creating harmony is far more important than me assuming that I know what's best. And I don't think we have to fix people. I think we have to discover them.
Yes.
Find out about them.
Yes.
Who are you? What do you like? It's so interesting to have conversations with people.
One of my new favorites to listen to on YouTube is Sadhguru. I don't know if you've listened to him. Oh my God, I love him. This is a man that is going around the world. He's been talking at Harvard and at University of Toronto. Mike Tyson had a conversation with him. Actors are interviewing him. His mission is to go around the world and basically awaken people, right? But he was talking about exactly what you're saying. He said, would you like to live with like yourself, a duplicate of yourself? If everybody was the same, would you like to live with yourself? And he was, I'm just giving you my perception. I'm not using his words, quoting him directly, but he talks about that. And then he talks about how good it is to be different and diverse. And he says what we do is we make it about discrimination instead of differences, and celebrating our diversity and recognizing the beauty in that. He's just amazing. And he really doesn't talk metaphysically, and he doesn't talk, in language that I can't fathom that what he's saying. I need a science degree, whatever. Very basic things, like really, and just so wise. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's worth listening to. I'm gonna
I'm gonna check it
everybody
out.
about him, because he is going around and simply saying things as they are, and just beautiful.
That's fantastic. That's, really that's what we need, is to acknowledge and it's like looking at a box of crayons.
Mm-hmm.
We might have our favorite colors in there,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that we want to use most. I like blue and green, purple, right? Those are my favorite colors, but I use all of them
Yeah.
because all of them are required in order to create pretty much any type of really lovely piece of art that I'm going to be mixing in different colors and different things. And it's a tapestry as well. When you look at some of these beautiful old tapestries that hang in museums, and you look at them and go, wow, like all the different threads that are required to create that beauty. And so it is with us.
Yes.
That every person of every station in life provides something.
Yeah.
It's the premise of the show that I do on Friday, the Joy Show, joy being an acronym for just one you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've written a children's book that not yet published, got to get that done. But it's about being unique and special like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the message that we have to get out to people, is that who you are is right and perfect. And if anybody told you that you're not good enough, that you're flawed, that you're broken, just come to know that's not the truth about
Right.
you. The truth about you is you were created perfect, whole, and complete, that you are unique and special like everybody else.
Exactly.
I don't care if you're the president of the United States, which recently we got to see from a new vantage point, or if you're the person living under the bridge,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? You
Mhm.
have the same value.
Absolutely.
And that, I think, is the message. That's the message I've been sharing with the people that I work with, is that everybody has value.
Yeah.
And the things that we've been told by parents, siblings, teachers, the media, whatever, is somebody's perspective.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make it true.
Exactly.
And
we've got a lot of undoing of that stuff, because somebody's perspective has been educated into us, right? And
well,
and not just educated, the media and the everything around us, having us believe something one way, when in actual fact, there's many ways to look at it, and maybe that one way isn't even the correct way.
Absolutely. And that's exactly right, Cheryl, because that's the thing, is we've been convinced
Mm-hmm.
of something, and we have a belief system operating underneath. We don't even know half of what we believe,
Yeah.
but our life is reflecting it.
Yeah.
And so if we can come back to first cause, there's one power in the universe and it's present right here, and live from that idea and acknowledging that every single person, all 8 billion people, are an individualized expression of that one eternal presence. What happens is we start to see. I participated last week into an interfaith service regarding World AIDS Day. And what was fascinating about it is we had a Hindu and a Muslim, and we had myself, and we had Indigenous peoples. And the message that everyone presented was a message of, we are one.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, here we came from all these different backgrounds, but as spiritual leaders, every single one said exactly the same thing.
Isn't that
in
interesting?
their voice.
Isn't that interesting? That different religions, different spiritual centers, saying that the same thing, and yet living it separately.
Well, that's the thing, right? But when I can see this group come together in oneness, that means there is a few of us who are
Yes,
practicing.
yes.
And of course, in order to shift the collective consciousness doesn't require everybody to be in agreement. It requires a percentage of the overall mass
Mhm.
to all of a sudden come to a new understanding, which then creates a quantum shift. And
Yeah.
that's what we're seeking. We're
And that's the
seeking to
beauty of
do.
the interfaith events, interfaith councils, interfaith. There's a lot
Yeah.
of that going on, and it has been for a long time. And I
Mhm.
think hopefully it becomes more visible, so that
Yeah.
more people will go to these events. I know that the Parliament of World Religions is taking place next year, I believe, in Chicago, and that's
Chicago.
another place. Like, oh my goodness, I went to one many years ago. There was something in Kitchener, but I believe it's just got bigger and bigger, and it's just quite an experience to go to.
I went to the one here in Toronto in 2018, and it was remarkable. It was
Mhm.
remarkable. The collaboration, the cooperation, and the thousands and thousands of people who attended and participated. It really was quite a fabulous experience to be in that group, to play, to laugh, and we were really crammed in.
Mhm.
Uh, the convention center that we were meeting in is huge, but man, we used it up.
Mhm.
It was really wonderful to listen to ideas of healing the planet, when it comes to climate change and such, working together to end poverty and homelessness, and from all different countries, all different walks of life, all different faiths, and coming together and sharing, collaborating, and cooperating together to create some ideas that might help us to begin to make systemic change that would be lasting. And so it's great to see that, and we need to expand it
Yeah.
even more.
And you see, so that for me, that is beautiful. That is the way to move forward,
It
right?
is.
Now, can you imagine if we did that, for example, a world of cultures,
Mhm.
right? And had some kind of thing. I remember when I was a little girl, we used to have something called the Rand Show. And different countries used to have their own stands. I don't know what you call those, right? And you could go into each stand and you could see that what they wore and their all their
Yeah.
indigenous clothing and uh, items that of meaning, and the food they eat, and all that kind of thing,
Yep.
which was so beautiful. I used to love that. They just have a theme park and other things as well, but that was beautiful. And then somehow that started dropping away, and it all became a big consumerism show, right?
Yeah. That idea of consumerism,
Yeah,
uh, I think that we gotta take a look at that model and
absolutely.
realize it doesn't work.
No.
We are a world of consumers. Well,
Mhm.
North America for sure. I don't know about the rest of the world, but the amount of stuff we buy and use and throw
Mhm.
away,
Mhm.
it's ridiculous. And I'm grateful to see more and more of reusing things. Here in Toronto, everything is recycled and composted, and
Mhm.
so, I mean, that helps, but to stop using plastics, to stop, doing things that are harming our planet
Mhm.
and harming our health. The fast food
Mhm.
places that are out there and the things they're offering, there's so much
And we
that
don't need so much stuff.
we don't.
We really don't. And it's just the marketing and that somebody was telling me that in some organization, the marketing department gets more money than any other department.
Of
Okay.
course.
because that's how they literally make us want something or buy something.
Yeah.
That it's just, so we got to reconsider that whole thing, because
That's, changing the messaging. I remember I worked in advertising for years, and there was a study done where they were going to do a focus group for a certain product. And so they picked, a dozen people up at the hotel and drove them to the place where the focus would take place. On the way, the drive was very strategic. Billboards, messaging on the radio that was piped into the vehicle, all of these things were targeted to this one product. When everybody arrived and they did the focus group, everyone chose the product that had been streamed through that entire drive there. Completely unconscious. People didn't notice what they were hearing. They didn't notice the billboard or the sign on the side of the bus. None of it was conscious. And yet when they walked into that room, every one of them chose that product.
Yeah. So what does that say to
Well,
how programmed we are?
We need to put some blinders on.
Programmed.
It's time to, how horses wear blinders so they don't get spooked? I think we need to start wearing
Just now,
blinders.
our artificial intelligence is going to be having a better life than we are.
Well, it's, the areas of manipulation and stuff that are controlling the way we think and see and do things. I think it's time for us to take our power back and to begin to really look at, what do I need and what brings me joy. And, I love watching people who are very generous, who are giving of their time, their talent, their treasure. What I love about that is it's all about how can I give and be in service. Whenever I do something like that, I feel happier. When I go and buy, I buy stuff and it's like, okay, I bought stuff. But what brings me joy is giving somebody a ride rather than them standing out in the cold, or, being able to buy somebody lunch, or to give them a few dollars because they have a need. It's all these little things that can be done, teaching new immigrants how to dress for our climate, right? Layers, right?
So, you're going to ask me in wrapping up just now in a few minutes, and sorry to interrupt you, but I have to share this while it's here now, because the other thing that Sadhguru talks about is, because what you're talking about to me is community looking after community.
Yes.
Right? It's bringing humanity back into, or human back into the word humanity.
Exactly.
Which we've moved far away from. And he talks about that. He talks about, the family system and how it used to be. And, we used to have a family that was, the parents and the children and the grandparents and the aunts and the uncles and the, and the cousins. And I remember, we used to have all this family. Today, what is a family? A family is two people and their children, or even one person and a child, or, just two people.
And that's the North American model.
Right.
Possibly European as well. I'm not sure.
God, how disconnected have we become? So recognizing that. And again, it's not about just having the conversation and talking badly about things. It's really about having the conversation and recognizing some things that we haven't thought of before. Some things that we might want to look into more. Maybe even just shifting the way we do something. Like, I think about my grandchildren. They've got so much stuff. They've got everything and anything they need. They really do, right? So what do you give kids like that? And to me, it's starting to look at sponsoring a giraffe in their name and telling them, that this giraffe is getting this because it's a gift from you, or, something like that. I don't know. I just think we got to think about doing things differently.
Well, and I think educating our children to give rather than take.
Yes.
It's what do you have to offer, and can you, and I'm grateful, for schools these days. They require, in order to graduate, you have to put in so many volunteer hours. And I'm grateful for that, because at least it's showing them,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of, giving back. But I think we really do live in this mass consumerism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the shift that we need to make, is to start getting rid of a lot of the stuff that we
Mm-hmm.
have, because we don't really need it.
Yes.
Looking at what do we really need. And having a comfortable home, having clothes on our backs, food in our bellies, friends and family to share time with, that is the most important. And I know for me, when I can spend time with people that I enjoy, that brings me more joy than anything else.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the fun. That's
Or making something for someone, right? Making a card or receiving a card that's been made, or something small, I mean, that's precious.
It is. It is.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's the things that actually matter. I don't need any more,
Stuff.
stuff. I got lots
Yeah.
of stuff.
Me too.
But it's like, what do I actually want? I'd love to go and, see a great play,
Mm-hmm.
or, look at some of the community events that are going on, and how can I participate in those. It's that, you get to know people, you get to know somebody's experience. And one of the things that I've talked about before is the human library, where we just sit and listen to somebody's
Yeah.
story.
What a gift.
And I think doing more of that is
Mhm.
actually something that could really help us to move forward with a new model. Because I think once we hear another person's story, it's hard to see them as a number
Yeah.
or irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we start to acknowledge the value that they actually bring and who they are.
And that's also part of restorative justice, because it puts a face to crime,
Yeah.
right? And I know that there's some terrible atrocities that have been done, and there's some terrible atrocities that have been done to people who do harm, no justification whatsoever. And there's a moment in time, a moment that person might have done something wrong, or the behavior wasn't, the way we would want it to be.
Yeah.
And they punished for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I don't believe in that punishment model. I
Doesn't
believe in cause and effect. And for every action, there is a
Our
reaction.
punishment model is a university for crime.
Exactly. Oh, thank you, my dear sister. I'm so glad we do this every week. Now, we are going to, for the next 2 weeks through the holiday season, we are doing reruns. And so please do log on and watch the shows. It may be something that you've missed. We'll send it out in the email. And if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, do that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, thank you for listening to my rambles and Rev B's wisdom.
Well, I don't know. I got some rambles. I think we both can ramble, but it's all good. It's
But
happy
you know what?
rambling.
Our rambling is exactly what this show is about. I love it. I'm
Yeah.
grateful to be able to do this. I'm grateful for New Thought Media Network, for the platform. And I'm so grateful for you and for Deja behind the scenes. And of course, for everybody who watches.
Everybody who watches.
Yeah.
Subscribe, share, and We'll see you again next time. Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays. Bye.
Change, change, you can do it. Change, change, it's a sure thing. Change, change, expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.